because this is such a vital topic for me, for my athletes, for you as parents, coaches, athletes. It's just such a vital topic. So I called it Beyond the Whistle, and that is to cover like beyond the competition, like once the competition is over, what now? Or when my career
Yeah.
ends, what now? Or any like once there's been some big moment and all the
Mm.
focus has been there, what now? So that's why I call it that.
Okay.
Um, so Susie, I'm sure you don't know who I am, but my name is Jo Mountford, and the company that I have started is called Per4m Mindset.
Yeah.
I'm a psychotherapist, I'm a Clifton Strengths coach, and I'm also a Gazing Red to Blue mindset coach. So those are the
Okay.
things that I do with the athletes, and I've got a player wellness program. And the Clifton Strengths is a psychometric assessment that athletes can do. And what it does, it turns out your top strengths, and then
Okay.
I will then coach that person into why those strengths come up, and where in their life have those strengths shown up, and how can those be translated into a plan B. So like after those skills that you have in hockey or in whatever field you are, how do we translate that into other areas? It's a great
Okay.
tool. And then the gazing red to blue mindset coaching is helping people to perform under pressure. So
Okay.
it's letting them understand what their triggers are, pressure moments, and helping them develop skills that they can train like they train all their sports skills, but they train their mindset as a skill so that when the big moments come, they've prepared for it and there are less surprises and that they feel some level of control.
Mm.
So those are the hats that I wear. And then I also in the player wellness program include breathing, yoga, meditation to help with relaxation.
Okay.
So it was this tragedy that made me think, um, let's do this, let me do this
Yeah.
talk. I don't really know if Jayden Adams committed suicide because of depression. I don't know why he did it. But what it really made me think about was how can we help coaches and parents to prepare the athletes to prevent that kind of outcome, to
Yeah.
prepare all athletes, all youngsters for that kind of outcome.
Mm.
So that is the reason that I was doing the talk.
Okay.
It's so sad. And there are two kids. One at Herschel's committed suicide last week. She was the year before. She's not there now. And there was another youngster, but he didn't commit suicide. He died. So it's just like, how can we help these youngsters to get perspective?
Yeah.
You know. So I had a coach who was a coach of a national team who came to me after some huge big World Cup, and he had suicidal thoughts. So,
Mm.
I've got like first-hand experience of someone after a big comp feeling the feelings that they're going through.
Okay.
Okay, so the process, and I'm sure both of you can identify with these is, and we've got Yana. Hi, thank you for joining. So when the competition is coming, let's call it a World Cup. Okay. So there's the selection process, then there's the training, and it's all very focused. So if you look at the bottom, then you've got an intense purpose. So every day, when your training's coming, you will probably have a nutritional information, what to eat, when to eat, about strength training, about sleep training, about all sorts of things. But so you really are part of something bigger, and there's just huge interest in you. Okay, so there's like that elevation, like feeling really chuffed and on top of the world. And then as I say, and that incline goes up more, and there's more external fuel. So the relentless energy being poured into you, the social media hype for many, and then there's so much community support. So it's within your family, within your greater community, And then whatever sport it is, there's generally like quite a hype and vibe about it. So there's this constant positive reaffirmation, building you up, building you up, building you up. And if you're a footballer or a rugby player, then there's the global hype too. And then the big competition comes. And so I was fortunate enough to be working with some Olympic athletes from Paris. And, the reality is you suddenly in an Olympic village, for example, and you are meeting possibly your childhood idols or the athletes or other sports that you've just had such admiration for, and you're meeting them like you are one of them, breakfast table, the whole thing. So it's this really surreal environment. And then add competition day into it, and there's that adrenaline and everything else that is happening on the field, in the dugout, wherever it is. And there's this constant vibe. Highs and lows. I mean, you're going to be going through the highs of winning and the lows, or the lows of sitting on the bench or losing, whatever it is. And so there's this constant adrenaline and hyper focus on you and your team. And then another thing that I've kind of forgotten about is because you're part of a group, whatever your group is, even if it's an individual sport, you're part of a team of some form. There's kind of a code and language that goes on between yourselves. So it's kind of your vibe. And so when you come home and people ask you, what was the World Cup like? Or what was that a big event like? There is like this, you guys will never understand feeling that they feel, but we'll get into that. So those are just, it's like a brief outline of the very big journey of, for some people, getting to a competition. For example, an under 16 essay competition won't be obviously as big as others because of, although it would be, it's being selected, going to trials for Western Province, then it's being selected, then it's the tournament, and then it's hoping to be selected for the essay team, and then it's the next level up. So it's all of those things. So then after that is what can happen. Okay, it's the come down when the adrenaline evaporates. And for the youngsters, as in school youngsters and varsity youngsters, often the July competition is followed by exams. Okay, so let's just put that into context as well. And I describe the aftermath of some important tournament a bit like the trauma experience. So I don't know if any of you have had a trauma before, but it's that heightened adrenaline where you are functioning optimally and you're clear thinking and there's focus and you can absolutely be on task at that time. But when the trauma disappears, when it's not so life-threatening, there's that incredible fatigue. So that adrenaline at the top of that curve is replaced with incredible fatigue and you want to sleep. And there's just this absolute can't do much, want to sleep. And then the next step is the lack of motivation. So you don't feel like doing anything. And there's that real lethargy. So that's when I say, like, your kids might come home or your partner might come home and you say, tell me all about it. Tell me about the tournament, the competition, the highs, the lows, tell me. And they're like, oh, it was so nice. It was fine, or I'll tell you later. And you just dying to grasp every little bit of information out of them, and they're not into it because you're not part of their tribe. So that's a real thing. And then if there's no concrete plan for after the event, that's when there could be serious depression and serious anxiety. So if, for example, there's retirement, I was working with a lady called Julia Vincent. She was a triple Olympian diver, springboard diver. So we knew this was the final one. So it was a year of preparing her for competition. And we were also preparing her for the next day. So when that last dive went in and she got out the water, And she went to her room and packed her bag. What was going to happen the next day? Literally, we needed to have a plan for the purpose for the next day. Um, and and Susie and Jana, I don't know what your story is, but I'd love to, if you want to just tell me shortly. But I just want to say to Susie, so when your daughter gets back from that under 16 tournament, we need to have a plan because she's going to be feeling a bit lethargic, and it might be exams, it might not be, but we're going to get into how to create the next day.
Yeah.
Okay. Joanna,
Okay.
would you like to just tell me the sport, if you're a coach, an athlete, a parent, what sport, anything like that? But if you don't want to, just put it in the chat and say no thanks or no. Okay, you don't, okay. So as I said at the bottom of the slide there, it says much like the aftermath of trauma, without a plan, life can look gloomy, lonely, and uncertain. So that's why I just used that analogy there. Okay. My whole drive as a coach has been athlete first. No, 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 not definitely not that. Mine is human first, athlete second. So when the adrenaline evaporates, there has to be something else. As I said, there has to be a plan B. So if for many people they focus on describing their child as, this is my child Sarah and she's a hockey player, or this is my child Anthony and he's a rugby player. That's putting the athlete first. Okay. So the core focus on that young athlete places them on a pedestal, and it purely focuses on their physical skills and the outcome. And their reward system is that their self-worth is built on performance. So the biggest mistake that we can make as parents is to say, I am so proud of you after a big performance, or after not so good performance, just being quiet. The better way of doing that is that you should be proud of yourself. So it is building their own self-worth on their ability, but they're not performing for an audience. So it's not an external reward that they're receiving. That's for a whole nother story, but I just wanted, that's why I put there, I'm proud of you. Don't say that. Say you should be proud of yourself. And then if you're an athlete first approach person, post the event, it'll leave you with an empty void of hopelessness when the event ends, because who am I now? What is my purpose? What is next? And it's often just a huge emptiness. So my focus is that we go for the human first approach, where the core focus is you equip athletes with critical life skills to navigate the highs and the lows, the injuries and the disappointments, so that they are far more than just the athlete. And the reward system is it cultivates and rewards their identity beyond the field of play. So they're still the human without that. That's just an add-on. That's just part of their life, but it's not all of them. And then their post-event reality is planning ensures a plan B, which means if things go wrong, we do the whole lot of what ifs. If things go wrong, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And it gives them purpose to do things outside of their sport. So when I was working with the Sunshine Ladies, I always made sure that they had another hobby. I always asked them, even when they were traveling, I would always say, what other hobby do you have that's not golf related? Or what other sport can you play when you're not practicing for golf? So that, again, if there was disappointment, if they didn't make the cut, if they were injured with regards to that, who else could they socialize with? And what else could they do? Wait, hang on, there's a thing in the chat. I need to see the chat. I don't, I, I don't know how to erase those. Sorry. Oh, did I draw?
No, I think
Gosh,
Yana
no, hang
might
on,
have,
guys, I
so
can't.
maybe she needs to. But
Yeah,
is also a message from Yana in the chat before that, Joe.
okay, sorry. I'm an athlete that plays rugby. I'm still a student and I'm currently playing rugby for Girls Power Rugby Academy. Sorry for not responding. I had a bit of a hiccup with my mic. Oh, yay. Okay, Jana. So that is, I'm really happy that you're here. And I'm hoping to do work. I am going to be doing work with the Girl Power Rugby Academy at False Bay, is my understanding. So that I'm so happy that you're on the call and don't worry about your mic. And I'm sorry about the red lines. I don't know why they're there and I don't know how to get rid of them. So Roger, you know that I'm not so good at this, so don't laugh. They're not on, they weren't there when I started. But this, if you read, do you want to ask me any questions, anybody, before I carry on about the previous slide?
It was super helpful to hear you talk about the kind of advice that parents can give, or how they can be helpful or less than helpful with athletes was one thing. And then in the ultimate frisbee world, yeah, we call the come down after a tournament PTD, post tournament depression, and it is
Yeah.
well known. Even if the tournament's only 3 days long, you're probably playing 2 or 3 100-minute games per day. It's extremely intense, even if it's just regionals or nationals. And it's normally over a weekend, and you're taking time off work, or going straight from school to a full weekend straight back to what you're doing before, and there's no space to decompress. You're going straight from one thing to another, so the come down is real.
It's real, Rog. Thanks so much. And the other thing that can happen, especially in teams, is that you might develop relationships with other people within your team and then you leave. And so there's that kind of that loss, or you might have had some less than optimal relationship conflicts within a team and it might be unresolved and then you've left and some people are living on their own. So it goes back to that space of loneliness. So it's really preparing that this is going to be my reality when I get home. So what are the things that I need to put in place? And there's nothing wrong with being on your own, but it's planning for that. It's really about being prepared for that. The talk on how we as parents can support our children rather than try and coach them or motivate them, that'll be for a separate day. But as parents, just briefly, they don't need us to analyze their game. They don't need us to motivate them. And they certainly don't want us to criticize their teammates because their teammates, for them, most of the people that play, their teammates are their teammates and they mean the world to them because they should have a common goal of outcome. And if we as parents criticize, you're not going to be doing them any favors at all. And so as parents, we want them to be developing a growth mindset. And so as parents, we need to be doing that too. Okay, my next slide is this one. Just have a look at that top question. So, and Jana, I really want you to write that down and maybe share it with your team. What would it take to compete and then not ever win another event again and still be content? And the reason I ask that question is if we are developing athletes first, then how can they be content when it ends, when the curtain comes down? And Jana, especially you playing rugby, is that you might be thinking, I'm going to be playing rugby for the next 5, 6 years, but injury might happen first, which brings that to an ending sooner. So if we don't know what makes us happy, what brings us joy, what activities we can do that make us feel relaxed, what hypes us up, all of that type of thing, it's it's a huge mountain to climb. So we're just trying to make that little hump a little bit lower. Okay. What do any of you think about that question? And Diana, if you want to type in there, please do. I can see. But I think it's a great question. What do you think?
Definitely. I think it also depends on how competitive you are and what level your team or the individual's competing at. For me, when I'm quite competitive, but I play at a very low level. So
Okay.
the team I played for last year, we won one game all season, and so that's we're not playing to win. There's something else that's in the mix, and it's around the enjoyment we get out of playing and the team that we're playing with. If it wasn't for those two things, we wouldn't be sticking around. We're an older team as well, playing against people 10, 20 years younger than us. So there's got to be something more than winning that keeps us in it.
Okay, so you could replace the win word for and not ever be able to play again, because that can be for some people a reality. They can't do the very thing that they love very much to play again. What you said about the social aspect is so. My personal experience is that I've got a daughter who's given up sport and is experiencing depression and anxiety. So the question I asked her was, when you competed, and she did compete on a quite a high level, what brought you joy? And she said, being with my mates. Okay, so what you were saying, Roger, doesn't matter what level it is. If you know that you playing sport was because you enjoyed the social aspect of it, and even if you're competitive, it doesn't matter what level, it gives you that level of satisfaction. That's wonderful. And then what you need to understand, again, the mindfulness of it is, how do I translate that competition into something else? So if I can't do it in my sport, how do I translate it into something else? Katarzyna, thank you for joining. I just wanted to explain where we're at now. So we were talking about the model of putting human first and athlete second, because if you put athlete first and there's an injury or you're not selected or what for whatever reason you can't continue with that sport and you haven't got human first, then the depression, the anxiety, the suicidal thoughts could follow. Okay, so and then I threw that question up the top there, which is, I think it's a good contemplative question to think about, is that what would it take to compete and not ever win another event and still be content? And I played hockey at a decent level, and I never got that right, because if I couldn't play at that level, I tried to go down a tier down, and I stopped. So that's how immature my thinking was, is that I couldn't find enjoyment there because it was more about just competing rather than actually being mindful of why I was playing. Okay, but let's look at, and I'm going to look at the side of if we focus on the athlete second model. So the athlete is developing physical skills. The skills they develop is teamwork, the highs and the lows of teamwork. They develop resilience, and they learn the skills of competition, like what does it take to be competitive, and how do I be competitive graciously, what sacrifices happen, etc., etc. And someone reminded me earlier that as high performance athletes, we should change the word from sacrifices to choices. So I was working with a young diver who's desperate to make the Olympics in 2 years' time. And she only went to one social in her whole school career, which was her own matric dance, because she is so focused on becoming an Olympic diver. And I used the word sacrifices, like I said to her, what sacrifices have you made, etc., etc. But the reality is, if we can turn it into a positive slant and say, I've made these choices because I'm a professional athlete or a high performance athlete, and it gives me joy because this is something that I really want to do. And people could say, but you're losing out on X, Y, and Z. And then as the athlete, you could say, well, you're losing out on my life, on what I'm doing because I'm passionate about it. So it's just a throw around of words, but I don't know what you think about that. But I quite like it that it's I've made the choice to make the sacrifices. And so if we do human first, we are cultivating a foundation of self-worth independent of their performance. And I don't know who watched the World Cup, but Haaland, for me, is that. He has self-worth. He has a love of the sport. He's got a love of life. He's got a love of people. He has a work ethic and an exercise ethic, like profound. He does breathing. He does meditation. His world is round. And so his identity is far greater than football. He has a whole lot of interests and other things. So if we focus on human first, then we develop interests and skills outside of sport. And I just think that is so profound. I will use myself as an example as well, is that I just identified as a sports person. And my mom said to me, please, can you take up some creative thing? And I was like, I'm not interested at all. But in a way, she forced me into doing some crafts. And now I'm obsessed. I absolutely love it. So it's crafting, or art is a way that they can learn to calm and to focus the mind on something else. And it's not an adrenaline surge, and it's another skill that can be added to their toolboxes. And another huge thing that I think is really important for sports people is to give back. So how can they translate the skills that they've learned and hand those over or hand them down to people, I don't want to say below them, but younger than them? So yeah, that's a really big feeling that I have, that it's human first, athlete second. Have any of you got a different view? And I'd love to hear it, or seen any challenges where the individual feels that this is my identity, I'm an athlete, that's it, or your own.
There's a message from Yana in the chat.
Okay, thank you so much. You are my okay. I think it's really something that not many athletes consider, because we just see our success and we entirely enjoy the sport that we'd not have even expected to have that injury. When that injury occurs, then we are suddenly faced with reality and we are forced to find another source of happiness instead of forming an identity in God and other activities. This is because we made the sport our entire life and personality, that when these incidences arise, we fall into a dark space. So it's really a question to consider and reflect on. And Jana, you know what is really important is that injury is part of high performance sport. So when I talk about we need to plan for it, is that when and if I get injured, or if and when I get injured, what can I do to be part of that recovery? What other skills can I learn? Like, what can I do in that downtime when I can't be physically active? What other skills can I develop? So thank you for putting that in there. And I think I cover it in this next one. So as a coach, I would put in the safety net and the what ifs. So hi, Yukai. Nice. Thank you for joining. And I promise you, I will send you the recording, but I'm so glad you've joined. Thank you. So the safety net and the what ifs. So I would say to a player or an athlete or a whoever is, what if I get injured? What if I'm not selected? And not what if I retire, it's when I retire. Like, what is the plan going to be? So in the injury case, so the sudden loss of physical capability, something's happened that you can no longer train or be part of that team or whatever the case may be. So if we plan, this is the bridge, have alternative identities. Who am I if I'm not a rugby player, a netball player, a frisbee player? Who am I if I'm not that? And what other hobbies do I enjoy and can I participate in? What other skills can I develop? So I was really bad at academics at school. And then when I did my second degree, not my first degree, my second degree, which is in psychology, I absolutely loved it. And I've never stopped learning since then. And when I did my Clifton Strengths, I had learner in my top 5. And I thought, there's no way I can have learner in my top 5. But what I realized is that I love the journey of learning. I don't need an A, I don't need an A plus. It's the process of learning and just like being more skilled in different things. So what I'm saying is that could be your journey too, that during my injury, it gives me the time to just do an online course or something else that I can develop, which I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So that's something to consider and plan for. Yeah, and then I've also included there, I spoke about it earlier, having creative outlets outside of the rehab process. Also, maybe you can connect with friends that you wouldn't have necessarily connected with because of your commitments to your team. So I always encourage people to journal all this stuff down, just so that you have the opportunities. I interviewed Erin Hunter. For those of you who know, she was the Springbok hockey captain when she retired. And she spoke about that when she retired, it was the time now that she could go to weddings and birthdays of her friends that she couldn't have done before. But it was worth the sacrifices that I called them in order to do it. So if you're injured, then have a plan. These are the things that I can do in my downtime so that it's not just an all, oh, my life is over feeling. Okay. Does anybody want to speak about that, or has had an injury and felt those experiences, or felt that emptiness of now what? Because I've also worked with ballet dancers. Now, obviously, injury is such a huge part of dancing, and your toes and your feet and your everything else. And had they not planned for, like, what now? What can I do? Then it's a really dark place. Okay, so if you've got any questions, pop them in the thing, or just take your mute off and speak to me. Then what if I'm not selected? So then all of a sudden, if sport is your only identity and someone said, how's your sport going? And you feel too ashamed to say, well, I actually wasn't even selected. So that is why it's critical again, that it's part of you, not all of you. And so the bridge would be having the internal self-worth and engaged community networks that you can disconnect from that sport, that it's not your only mates in that sport, that you have interests elsewhere. So for a time you can take a break from it, just so that you can deal with the feelings and have other input and information and ideas. And would that be helpful, do you think? Okay. And then
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Yukai, I don't know if you want to speak up after I do this next one about retirement, but as I said before, everybody has to retire. So there's always the need to have a plan B, okay? But for some people, it might come earlier than planned. So the sudden loss of daily routine, purpose, and teammates is something that can definitely happen post injury, and can definitely happen post retirement, and definitely happens post performance. So as in post a World Cup or post a big tournament or whatever, it's suddenly I don't have to get up and go to gym, or I don't have to go for a run, or I don't have to get to the practice, or I don't have to get on a Teams meeting. Those routines and schedules are no longer there. I remember talking to someone who went into corporate retirement, and he said suddenly the emails stopped coming. So he was like, who am I? Because no one's responding. So it's real. That's why we need to plan for it. So as I said, we have to have a plan B, a pre-planned secondary career trajectory. And that's where, again, we've used the Clifton strength. What skills in my sporting career can I translate into something else? And for the golfers, I always said the Pro-Am is one of the most important days of your week because that's where you're networking. And if you know what other interests interest you, you can then connect with the right people. So that means that retirement can look exciting and it can be something that you look forward to, rather than what am I going to do? Like, I'm only this, what else can I do? So as coaches and parents and adults, this is the conversation we need to have with our youngsters, like early on. I think, I'm not sure, I think, yeah, what I think Kai has maybe got developer in her top 5, and developer is someone who just loves seeing people grow, and she's able to see the skills and identify someone's potential and all of that. So being a teammate, that's incredible, and yet she can take that into teaching or identifying talent or other things like that. So you can translate that into something else. And it's just being able to have the vocab of, okay, these are the skills I'm learning here, and I know I definitely don't want to coach, or I know I definitely don't want to be in the sport anymore, but maybe I can do whatever, because it might be that. Okay. The next one is just, my comment was just to redefine the locker room culture, and that there's always hope. And what I mean by redefining the locker room culture is that it's okay to be depressed, and it's okay to be anxious, and it's okay to be fearful. It's reality. So to be okay to speak up, to ask for help. Like my desperation with Adams is that if only he had asked for help, like, just, you're never alone. That's it. You might feel alone in that moment, but one call for help could save a life. And so many youngsters and people are suffering with depression and anxiety, but together we can make it easier, and there's always an option. There's always something else. Last night I walked outside and I looked up and I looked at the stars and the universe, and I was like, we are so little with our little problems in this enormous universe. And if we can just get perspective of that, it's huge for us right now. But if we look at the bigger picture, there's always hope. Okay. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I would love to open up to others. If you would like to chat, I would love you to chat to me, ask me questions, share experiences, if you find that helpful, anything.
I'll just jump in because I've been talking a lot, so it can get me out of the way. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, super interesting. I'm wondering what a team can do, because a lot of this seems more targeted at the individual or individuals within a team, and I'm wondering what a team can do, maybe with the coaches or management or in the culture, to create some sort of structured awareness about what to do after events or tournaments. In my context, we often, our national teams will only exist for a campaign, and once the tournament happens, the team disbands. So there isn't actually a sort of a post-campaign debrief as a team. It's like you've traveled to this country, you've played the tournament, last day you kind of watch the gold, the placement matches, you have the tournament party, and then you go home to wherever you are in the country, and that's done. So there isn't actually a kind of formal way of having a post-tournament debrief. So yeah, just your thoughts on any of that.
Roger, I think that is having that get-together debrief that you talk about, even it's going to be online, right? Because everyone's scattered now. That is the part that is, I think, so vitally important, because what I was told by this national coach is that, as I say, they've got a code, like you've got a code language that you've got your lingo and your experiences and your jargon that happen on tour, and you come back to the boring life of having to go into the shopping and listening to the grind of real life, etc. And people asking you, how was it? And tell us about this. And you're like, you're not going to get it. So I think having a post-campaign debrief, like a week afterwards or sooner, would be brilliant. And then read the audience, and then see if there's a need for it, for follow-ups. And it might be just a monthly thing, and have a guest speaker talking about something, or let it be nutrition or recovery or something that it keeps them part of their experience, so that it doesn't get forgotten about and let die. Because I think that's what's real, that really, that we were part of something and now it's just fallen apart and nobody will understand. Is that something that could be realistic, a post-campaign debrief?
Yes, absolutely. An online one. I don't know about sort of monthly follow-ups from there, but certainly something. And it would be online. That's the only way that would work.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for the others who've joined. What do you think about that? On what would you benefit from? Do you think the people around you would benefit from a post-performance debrief with the people that they were with? Because I don't think it would be helpful for like the footballers necessarily, to come back from the World Cup and then be told to join this talk, because A, they don't know me, and B, for teenagers, it takes time to trust. So they need to have known me before, and then they will trust and open up and share their feelings and become vulnerable. So that needs to be within the team. And I think that message needs to come from the coaches, that kind of, or the manager, to take responsibility and say, this is something that we are implementing post, so that the tournament, the experience doesn't die when the final whistle goes. That it doesn't need to be prolonged, but there needs to be like closure, maybe 2 calls afterwards, just to make sure that everybody's on task, has a plan, has a purpose. Purpose is key. Purpose is the key to every single day. Please, I'd love to hear from somebody else. So,
There's a
Katarzyna
message
said,
in the chat. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm in a loud environment and it might be difficult to speak, but I would add that it's important to show other roles in sports besides being the athlete. They can enjoy sports atmospheres and be there as a referee, support personnel, etc. And even as a volunteer, love that. Okay, after retirement or during injury, that's amazing. So we are part of a collective called Women in Sport, and through that, I've learned about all these incredible different roles that there are in sport and in women's sport. And I think the UK are incredible with the volunteer work that's they're asking, and like the Olympics, the messages have gone out to who's interested in volunteering, and that is a way of giving back, and it could be a way of getting into something else, getting into a career, a next career or whatever, because there are so many jobs available: media, journalism. There's the lawyers are doing them, there's the marketing, then there's the eventing, and there's just so many other opportunities that you can get involved in. There's consulting, but that is a fantastic idea, and thank you. Yeah, and also, like as you said, during injury, I think pitching up and watching your own games or whatever is a good thing, but it would also be good for your own humility and perspective is to maybe go and watch another sport, go and support others, go and like get behind other people, because if it's all about you, then it's all me focused. But if you can actually look outside of your world and see what other people are doing and maybe how other people are struggling, it can also help you feel a whole lot better. Like yesterday, I don't know when I was driving or something, and there was a man he had one leg and he had a prosthetic on the other, and he had a backpack on, and he was just cruising. I was in Somerset West, and he was just cruising down the road, happy as a sandman. He was just so happy, and he was fit and strong. And I thought, okay, so he's been through huge injury, and he's just found a different purpose, and he's thriving. So, yeah, I love that. Thank you. The question is, if someone does not need help hang on, if someone does not need help to reach out if they're struggling or even in an emergency, what do you recommend to do? So it does need help. Okay, if they do need help. I think there needs to be someone that, as a team, there need to be numbers that people can call. But I say that, and then I know when I contacted my players, and they said, yes, there are a whole lot of available help online, and people can contact them. But again, it's the biggest thing is probably a buddy system or a mentor system. I think that would be the start, that you reach out to your mate, and then your mate needs to reach out for help. Okay, so here's one. I think the main aspect of being the athlete itself is being a leader, not only on the field, but mainly off the field, because there are so many aspects of specific sporting codes that includes being a leader in the space of guiding others that might feel lost and new to a sport, to make them feel welcome and encouraged to come back to the sport because they will remember the leadership and kindness of that person in that sport. And you know what's so incredible about that is that if you're a sports leader within your sport and you've got some people who've been in difficult circumstances at home, and they look up to you and think, okay, if I can do that, that is the life path that I can choose rather than the unhealthy path. And also, other people will observe your leadership roles and encourage you to take on other job opportunities or talks or being a speaker. Yeah. And also, just as a woman in sports advocate, it's about talking about being a woman in sport, like the challenges that you face. However, I say that the challenges that you face, I also so advocate for women that we have got superpowers, like because our bodies go through so much, and we just adapt and we grow and we take on the next thing. So if we as women realize that we can teach the youngsters that, yeah, your body's going to change, but you have the choice how you adapt and grow and juggle and take on all the responsibilities that you do. Yeah, it's a great voice to have. I want to ask a question just to throw it out there for a bit of, yeah, conversation. Is that I was listening to a podcast, and the speaker said high performance comes with a lack of wellness. So what he was saying, that in order to be a high performance athlete, person, leader, whatever it is, there are going to be some sacrifices, or there's going to be some fallout, and wellness is possibly one of them. What do you think of that statement?
Seems to be an inevitability in the assumption. And I don't think I like that inevitability.
So, so I think we can look at it from two different perspectives. So if you look at a pie of wellness, and you look at the pie and you break it up into my social, my work life, my family life, my nutrition, my fitness, my financial wellness, and my spiritual wellness. Let's use those 7, for example, and you draw your pie and you portion it out how you're living your life. That would be a wellness wheel, so to speak. Okay. But in order to be a high performance athlete, there needs to be a bigger portion where the focus is mainly on that activity, which means, for example, your social life is going to be sacrificed for a time. Okay. But it doesn't have to be like that in the sense of you are developing. So if wellness is the first level, like the foundation level, our wellness, our health, our mental health, our physical health, nutrition, sleep, all of that fits the skills of level 1. Then you acquire more skills as the high performance comes, because you're just adding more tools to your wedge of high performance. But it's being aware, and I think that's the key, is that when you have awareness, you have choice. So the awareness of, at the moment, this is where my attention is, and something else is lacking because of it, but you can shift over to your family time, social time, work time, whatever, when you can. What does that sound like? Then it doesn't look like wellness takes a huge knock in order to be high performance.
Yeah, exactly. And that can only help with injury prevention as well, surely.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, just so for those who don't know me, is that I include very much, I'm very, very passionate about breathing exercises, so that again, you have control, you bring back your control. If you're just talking about recovery, if you're in recovery, these are the things that you can learn to do. Breathing exercises, you learn to regulate your parasympathetic nervous system, which teaches you to calm your body and mind. So you can do breathing, you can do meditation. And the one, I call it visualization, rather meditation, that I put on my YouTube channel is the body scan. And in that, I do the body scan so that the person becomes aware of the body. And becoming aware of your body parts, it stops the chatter in your mind. And then I take the person into their high performance environment. So there's one for swimming, for diving, for, I can't remember the other ones I've done. So I actually take them from a calm state visually into their high performance environment, so they have access to their calming mechanisms in those. So those are just other things that you can learn in your recovery, or other skills that you can add to your toolbox, so that those skills are very much human first.